How is everybody today? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and yep, we're gonna tie a fly. So we're thinking toward next year. Maybe a lot of you are in that winter time where or maybe your trout seasons are closed or what have you. You got ice on the lakes. Great time to fill those boxes. So this is going to be a fun one. I don't use a lot of prefab products such as shells or skins, but here we've got the Scud or Gammarus Shell from Pro Sportfisher, and one look at that thing and you can see why I'm easily converted. That's hot. That's a cool product. I'm a fan, and so let's see how this turns a regular old fly into something a little bit more realistic, if you will, and with the ease that can only be accomplished with a prefab product like Pro Sportfisher Gammarus Shell Back. All right. In the vise today, we have the Ahrex FW541 size 12. This 541, of course, being the barbless version of the 540. No bead, I know, right? But we still want some weight. And so this weighted wire, which is the 0.015, is going to do two things. It's going to add a little bit of weight for us to get that fly to slowly sink. Don't want a quick descent, slowly sink. But it's also going to give us this foundation on the underside of our body that will allow us to have the proper profile. And the reason I say that is when you get into these scuds specifically, right? A lot of times you can dub a body or what have you, and that's great. But if there's nothing underneath, like that dubbing can sometimes just collapse on you if it's not quite tight enough in there and all that good stuff. So this is, again, we're getting double duty out of our lead-free weighted wire today. Anytime you can accomplish two things with one material, I call that a good thing. All right, let me just turn this ever so slightly so I can round over my cut edge there on that weighted wire. Squeeze these wire wraps together. And I didn't even count how many we've got there, maybe 12, somewhere in that range. So keep that in mind. You know, don't expect to tie one of these and be the master. It's going to take you a couple. This is something goofy, something different, something new. And chances are it's not going to be the best fly you've ever tied on the first try. Patience is what we're all about. All right, so now we've got our wraps on there. Let's get some thread started. And this is Veevus 50 denier in black. And I'm not going to cut that tag in just yet. I'm going to get a few loose wraps here. And then I'll come back. Now I cut my tag out. No slippage. What it does is it also gives me a little bit of tension on the backside. So when I get my wraps to the front, or we're just on the back of the hook, it doesn't let any of those weighted wire wraps separate. And it's those little things that'll just give you the ultimate in a clean finished fly. Those are the little steps that we're looking for. All right. Now we can come in and get some better coverage on these wire wraps. Great. All I'm going to do now is work my way down a little bit on the rounded portion of this hook. And so this is just giving myself a little indicator of where I want the antennae to be tied in. And so for today, we are looking at some spawn green-winged teal for the antennae. Nothing crazy. Just come in, peel off a section. So that's what I'm looking at. And then as far as length, I'm looking at roughly one body length here. Just like so. Transfer that to my off tying hand. Put it where it needs to be tied in. And don't move that mark. Now I just tie down to it. Bum, bum, bum. If you hum a little like that, I've noticed that the flies are a little bit cleaner and happier. I don't know if it's true for everybody, but it works for me. So if this camera weren't on, boy oh boy, it'd be noisy in here. There we go. Our antennae tied in. Beauty. Come over the top one more time just to make sure everything is solid on that front. And let's get into one of these little scud backs or Gammarus shells, whatever you want to call them. I guess we should go based off of the name that the Pro Sportfisher uses, which is a Gammarus shell. And again, size on this one I'm using that size 12 F41, and it just so happens to line up very well with the extra small in black. Black, brown, clear, any of them would work. Here on the front, that little tab that they're going to allow you to tie in, I want you to notice something. There are only eyes in what would be the front or head of your Gammarus, and then that little tie-in section, and then on the back side they've also got the tie-off section. Great. They were thinking ahead and making this easy for us. And so I don't want to come all the way so where the head starts right away. Just back that off just a little bit. And so keep in mind we still have to put material in here. Just tie that tab down all the way to where your antennae are and call it good. All right, so now we need some flash, because I love flash on the underside of that shell, if you will. And no matter what product I'm using for the shell, I do like the idea of having some flash underneath that. So for this, I've got 3 strands of dyed Pro Flashabou in olive. Okay, get that tied all the way down. Fantastic. So this is, much like a woolly bugger, you get everything tied in and just kind of put it together. Like, those are fun flies. They're easy flies. Great for a beginner because you can always adjust very subtly and accomplish exactly what you're trying to do. Right? There's a very quick response as far as a learning curve. All right, so for the rib today, we're going really fancy. No wire. We are using some Tippet material, and this happens to be just some 4X. 4X Tippet for the win. So tie that down. And don't go all the way down on the rib. And there's a reason, and I'll tell you here. Once we start building this fly or putting it together, if we have this rib tied all the way forward, when we pull the shell back and we start to wrap the rib, we would have a difficult time, one, where the eyes are placed, so it would look awkward to have a wrap on the wrong side of those eyes, but also it would want to slip down. So we want to give ourselves some room, because when we come in with our body material, we'll go ahead and separate that rib from the head a little bit, but that'll make more sense as we get going here. All right, body time. And today I have some spawn dub, and of course I am using BC Scuds, baby. So let me dub a noodle. And with this noodle, I'm not going bulky and then trying to twist it firm. I'm going thin and getting this noodle very tight. And the reason being, I want a secure underbody. So when I do come through with that mono rib, I'm not decompressing too much of that underbody and undoing the shape of our scud or our Gammarus. And I know that might not completely make sense to everybody, but as your tying career or your tying journey goes onward, it will of course make more sense. And you go, you know what? Maybe Pete wasn't that crazy. Maybe he did know what he was talking about. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, that's a pretty good noodle, I think. So I'm just going to snug it up a little bit toward my hook shank. One last adjustment of one more turn or tightening of everything. And then we'll start wrapping. All right, here we go. Just wrap forward, which is backward actually. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfect at this point because we will be traveling back over this first pass. Key here, make sure you're getting material all the way to those tie-ins. And then on your way back here, make sure you are doing your best to fill in any of the wraps where it may have missed. And like, at this point we start getting a little paranoid and going, ooh, I need to add some dub. But chances are this is going to be pretty close to just the right amount. Let's see. And boy, it's just on the edge there, but for this one, I'd rather not crowd that hook eye. Just something to keep in mind. All right, at this point, you could also use a loop. Put your material, spin, tie, great. It find which way works best for you. Maybe in the next video we'll do it in a loop version. But here's our flash, our pieces of Flashabou here. Just bring them right on over. And one thing I want you to look at is keeping everything on top of that fly, and as much as possible, just dead center on the top, right? That's our goal. And just in case something were to move and we'd have to undo those wraps, don't cut that flash just yet. All right, so now I'm carefully separating my Gammarus shell from those antennae. And so you see this gives us that little tail of that material there just to go ahead and catch with our thread. Wasn't that nice of them? Make sure, once again, however, that that skin or that shell back is staying, guess where? On top of our fly. You see those little cute eyes down here in the head? I mean, that's awesome. All right, let's check out what we're doing here. I'm talking too much. I'm getting excited about this fly. Forgive me. All right, so now if there's a tricky part, I guess this would be it, even though it's really not. So yes, wire is typically my material of choice when I'm tying scuds, but because this shell is already designed to give a realistic impression and look, I don't want to ruin what Pro Sportfisher has already done. Namely, I don't want to cover up any of that beautiful shell. I just want to make sure it's as strong as it can possibly be. So mono is the choice in ribbed on this one. A couple wraps to solidify that 4X. And I'm just going to give it a slight pullback over itself, give it a wrap, maybe a second wrap, like so. I'm going to turn that and cut this out. Bingo. All right, let's see how we did on keeping everything on top here. I'd say we did a pretty darn good job, everybody. If your fly looks like this so far, it's going to be all right. All right, now it's just a matter of some cleaning up, so to speak. So we have the tag end of our shell, we have our flash, and we have every, if there's a possibility of a little bit of material coming out of a dub, it's going to be right there with a hook eye. So on the sides, underneath, not a big problem, but on the hook eye, make sure it's clean. Okay, great. And now clean up that little tie off area, and let's get a whip finish in there. And there we go. I'm just doing one today. This thread's very, very strong, and even for a small thread, it will bulk up very quickly. So keep that in mind as well. Very many of these little bits and pieces here, keep that as clean as we can. There we go. All right. So now I know what you're thinking. Pete, that's a great body. There are no legs. There's no movement coming off of this thing. Ah, you are correct. So what do? We come in here, and whatever Velcro you might have for a brush or metal brush like I have here from the Swiss CDC, like any of that's great. This little tool here, your bodkin, you can get in there and just start picking at some of the dubbing here. And the next thing you know, you're going to create this very realistic body. There are these little legs and everything else coming off or out of a Gammarus on the underside. They do have little legs in the front, right? So I don't need a ton of material coming out from that underside. Like I'm really happy with this. I've fished a lot of scuds in my day, and I can tell you this will get her done. At this point, I'm going to come back in, and we'll just give a little kiss of some cement to these thread wraps. And guess what? It is time to go catch some trout. Fortunate where we live, there are some lakes within very close proximity. And the beauty of where we live is it very, very rarely freezes here. So even if it were to have some ice on there on a cold morning, boy, by lunchtime, good chance you can still fish it. So there we have it, folks. Bring some of those fibers down. If you have these unruly fibers toward the tail, go ahead and trim those like so. And go ahead and show me a sharper looking scud than that. So there we go, folks. The Gammarus Shell Back from Pro Sportfisher. I'm going to try turning this toward you. I don't know if the focus will let me play nicely. There we go. I'm going to keep turning. I want you guys to see that head, if you will. Now I'm going the wrong direction. Going backwards on you, forgive me. And there we go. So now you're looking at the front end of that scud, and boy, that's just cute. All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, by all means, please hit like, hit subscribe, and we will see you all on the water.